of where this football team is, that maybe you haven't put together your best game yet, but you've still been winning a lot of games. You've still been able to get to.
Yeah, I think we've had good moments of playing good complementary football, and then we've had some not so great moments. And I think some of the mistakes maybe that we've made the last 4 games that we've won showed up yesterday against a good football team that it's hard to overcome those in those moments. So Detroit played a clean game. I mean, when you look at it, they played a clean game. Didn't make any critical mistakes where we had a handful of critical mistakes that really came back to bite us. I was disappointed with the number of penalties and just self-inflicted wounds that we had, and that's a lot to overcome right there. And obviously, we didn't do a good enough job to be able to overcome that.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Didn't have much time yesterday to pour over Matt LaFleur's presser. He had a long 20 minutes with the media yesterday as the team goes out for their bye. Matt LaFleur talked about how a lot of the coaches are going to go home, go to the families if they don't live in Green Bay, or take time. Because you can watch film at home. You can get work done at home and work on coaching projects at home. And he talked at length about penalties. And he probably committed of this 20-minute presser, probably did 5 to 10 minutes alone. Questions about Jordan Love's interceptions. It's like, hey, how do you pick your spots? How do you... And Matt LaFleur basically gave the same answer for every question. Well, every situation is different, which is true. We're trying to learn more about how are you attacking that? How are you coaching that? But then again, it's a press conference. He's not going to tell us that stuff. Nor should he. He's not under oath. He's just up there to fulfill a media obligation, and I get it. But Matt LaFleur's presser, I didn't really get to it today. Some interesting comments, some back and forth, some good stuff that I'll share with you during tonight's show. Yesterday, we were reacting to the weekend. We were reacting to the game. Packers Lions on Sunday, and then a little bit Wisconsin, Iowa. How fun was Ben Kenny last night, by the way? That was a really fun show last night. So thank you, especially so many great calls to talk Packers yesterday as well, and Badgers, but mostly Packers. Tonight, we'll get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts. We're going to hear a little bit more from Matt LaFleur. Going to hear from Brian Gutekunst in hour number 2. He's speaking, I think, at 4:30 Green Bay time. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to pay attention to it, but Mike Clemens is there, and he will give us a full report and accounting of everything that happened, everything that Brian Gutekunst talked about, and everything that he heard and said trade deadline day in Green Bay today. So that's kind of the agenda tonight. It's the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Would love to continue to take your calls. I don't know if it'll be as fiery and as jam-packed on the phone lines as it was last night, but you're always welcome. 608-321-1670. I'll start taking some calls after our first commercial break, and you can comment on the live stream, YouTube and Facebook. Just look up the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills. It's always streaming live on Twitter as well, and you can always tweet me at Wisco Grant. That's not just during the show, but anytime. Let's talk about what the Packers did at the deadline today. They traded away Preston Smith to Pittsburgh. I like that move a lot for Pittsburgh. I also like that Pittsburgh got Mike Williams. I'm more and more in on Pittsburgh as the year goes along. So for Pittsburgh, I think this is a sharp move, and I think Tomlin and Preston Smith will be good. And I'm happy for Preston Smith because I want him to go somewhere where he's going to be able to be his best and to contribute. And I think Pittsburgh will probably be a better spot for him next year or I should say this year and maybe into the future than he would have been in Green Bay. He just wasn't playing a whole lot. So cool for Preston Smith. And, before we talk about the machinations of this trade and should or should not the Packers have done this or should they have handled the deadline differently, Preston Smith was an awesome Packer. He was nothing but available and productive. He wasn't a superstar, but always a great veteran presence, always available, and always a contributor. A really good Packer. And I think if we would travel back in time to whatever, March or April of 2019 when that deal was signed, and we said, hey, he's going to play in Green Bay for X amount of years, and he's going to play this many games, you said, wow, what a great signing. So a really good Packer, Preston Smith, and wish him nothing but the best moving forward. I think he's really good acquisition. One of Brian Gutekunst's first, I believe, back in 2019. That was either the first full year after Goody had taken over or in the offseason that he took over. I can't fully remember the order of things, and it doesn't really matter. He was a great Packer regardless of, when in Gutekunst's tenure he was acquired. We want to talk about the Packers side of this, okay? They get a 7th-round pick and, more importantly, clear his contract. Preston Smith was owed a good amount of money. It wasn't tens of millions or 20s or 30s of millions of dollars, but it was a significant cap hit for a team that really doesn't have a lot of significant cap hits. It's a lot of rookies and then a lot of high-priced free agents like Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love, players in their prime. Preston Smith was the aging veteran who was like, hey, man, if you could find a way to wiggle that money around and create some space, that was probably the place in which it was going to happen. So they get the 7th rounder. They make some cap space. I reacted to this trade in stages. Not like stages of grief or anything like that, but when I first saw it, and I tweeted this at Wisco Grant, my thought was, well, this better be a precursor to another trade. We're contending, trying to win a Super Bowl. We're not giving away good players. So they trade Preston Smith, get an extra pick, and then hopefully with that newly created cap space, an extra pick for whatever it's worth, a 7th rounder, they can go out and acquire a player like Azeez Ojulari from the Giants who didn't end up getting traded. I thought this is the first step. This is a precursor to another trade. My first thought when this happened was, well, there's got to be a Taylor Rogers, Asteria Ruiz to Preston Smith's Josh Hader, right? That was my thought. And then after a couple minutes, I thought more about it and I looked at the data or the facts of it all. He only played 21 snaps on Sunday against Detroit. He is making a substantial amount of money. He was likely going to be cut this offseason anyways. Saving a good amount of money getting off him, like I said. And he isn't a fit for Jeff Hafley's defense, which is a premise I struggle with, and I've talked about that. It's like, oh, so your defense can't use a solid veteran pass rusher? Okay, well, then I question your defense a little bit. And people have said that about Kenny Clark. Well, this defense isn't a great fit for Kenny Clark. Well, then what kind of defense is it? You can't use a reliable veteran playmaking nose tackle who's been nothing but good his entire career. But all right, fine. I'll accept that premise. He wasn't a good fit. A 3-4 outside linebacker versus a 4-3 defensive end with his hand in the dirt. Whatever. I'm not a football coach, but fine. He doesn't fit the scheme. Got it. Okay. All of that makes sense. The logic and the facts and the dollars and cents, right? All that makes sense. All of those things tell us that this is a fine trade. I understand that. I accept that. But, and then this was stage number 3 of me reacting to this trade this afternoon. The Packers are a young team with Super Bowl aspirations, and they're trading away a veteran who is a rotational pass rusher. Those two things just don't jive, right? Take scheme fit out of it, take money out of it, take all of the dollars and cents and take the logic and take the facts and set it to the side and just look at this as I don't want to say spiritually, but just think about this in the grandest sense. The Packers are a young team trying to win a Super Bowl. They're very much within a window of contention here. A team that is young and trying to win a Super Bowl shouldn't trade away one of their beloved veterans and shouldn't be giving up depth at pass rusher. If anything, they should be looking to acquire it. It'd be like in baseball if a team was trying to win a World Series and they trade away a nice rotational reliever. And I understand, what do you mean, like the Hader trade? Yeah, we all thought the Hader trade was stupid at the time. Okay, that's exactly what I'm getting at, right? Teams who are trying to win a World Series don't trade away good reliever depth. They look to acquire it. They don't trade away good veteran presences. You don't trade away a good veteran presence. You look to acquire it, right? When you are trying to win a championship, you look to acquire depth and you want a trusty veteran who's been there, done that. Preston Smith fit that bill. Okay, so he wasn't producing at a super high level. Okay, so he wasn't a perfect fit for Jeff Hafley's defense. Okay, so it saves him a couple $1 million. Fine, that all makes sense. I accept that. Those are all the reasons they made this deal, and those reasons make sense to me. But just in the grandest sense, the most biggest picture sense, this is a young team trying to win a Super Bowl, and they just traded away a sturdy, reliable veteran at an important position of depth. I'm having an issue squaring those things. And that's okay, right? That's not me looking for a reason to rip the Packers. That's not me looking for a reason to be unhappy or a reason to, to create some drama or to create some unhappiness with the Packers. I'm having an issue squaring those things. My team is a young team trying to win a Super Bowl. They traded away depth at the pass rushing position and veteran depth, reliable veteran depth. I don't know that I care about the productivity. I don't know if I care about the money unless there's some plans for the money down the line. I don't think if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you trade away a player like that at a position like that. Does that make sense? So on one hand, I totally get this trade. Makes sense for all of the dollars and cents, the logic, the reason, the facts. That all makes sense to me. It's just when you step back and you squint and you look at this in the grandest sense again, it's just not really the type of move that a team makes when they're trying to win a Super Bowl, right? Preston Smith is the type of player you look to acquire as a nice little ad for not a huge price tag, right? Going into a possible Super Bowl run. So I'm struggling with that. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, right? But, the nightmare scenario is now you come back from the bye and Kingsley Enagbare twists an ankle and he's going to miss a month. Okay, well, now you'd really like to have that depth, right? Even if it's not a perfect fit for the scheme. Come back and Lucas Van Ness gets a hip pointer. Or Rashawn Gary twists an ankle on the turf at Ford Field. I don't like getting rid of reliable, solid veteran depth at a position of depth. Everyone could use another pass rusher. Everyone could use another defensive lineman. Everyone could use another corner, just like in baseball. Everybody could use another reliever. You don't trade away relievers when you're trying to chase a World Series. See Brewers, Milwaukee, parentheses, 2022. Right? I'm having an issue squaring that. It'll be fine, I'm sure. And I think the trade is reasonable and it clears up money. Ken Ingalls, among others, giving us the numerical values. This trade is going to create cap space of, and I'll go year by year, little over $2 million in cap space right now, which kind of my hope was, they're creating some cap space right now to bring in someone else, which they didn't. It's going to create $7.6 million of cap space in 2025, $18 million of cap space in 2026, and $1.6 million of cap space in 2027. And to get a 7th-round pick in return, and to trade away a player who wasn't really producing all that much. I get it. It makes sense. But again, spiritually, it's just like, man, Super Bowl teams don't trade away pass rushing depth. They don't trade a good veteran presence away. So I'm having an issue squaring those things. I think as far as NFL trade deadlines go, this was a pretty fun one. The Commanders acquired Marshawn Lattimore for a 3rd and a 4th. Very good corner. It's had some injury issues, some hamstring injuries. But I think that's a risk that you take either the Commanders. Remember, they had 2/3 because they traded away Jahan Dotson because the Eagles just had to have him. Howie Roseman, Howie Roseman theft, fleecing again. My God, what a GM he is. The Cowboys acquired, and this was yesterday, I think, either was it this morning or last night, or I can't remember exactly when they did it, but the Cowboys acquired Jonathan Mingo for a 4th-round pick. DeAndre Hopkins went for a 5th, but I guess if you have an opportunity to give up a 4th-round pick for a wide receiver when your season's already fallen apart, I guess if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you got to do it. The Lions acquired Zadarius Smith. And I'm happy for Zadarius Smith because this will give him an opportunity to come back to the NFC North and to stick it to the teams who did him so dirty, to stick it to the Packers who did nothing but give him a massive deal, and to stick it to the Vikings who did nothing but give him a nice solid role and a lot of money. Yeah, really have an axe to grind there, Zadarius Smith. I'm sure we're going to hear about that. I don't like whiny players. I don't like players who bounce around from team to team, and it's always the other team's fault. It's never my fault. It's not my fault that I'm on 5 teams in 5 different years. It's not on me. It's everyone else's fault. It's all these other teams' fault. So an entertaining trade deadline, and I have some thoughts on, what it means for the Commanders, the Cowboys, the Lions. The Steelers are in an interesting spot. I think they had a really nice day. They acquired Preston Smith from the Packers, but they also acquired Mike Williams, which I think is interesting. We can talk about all those things, and we can continue, of course, to talk about the Packers trading away Preston Smith. Not totally shocking. It made sense on a spreadsheet. Again, I didn't think they'd actually do it. It's not about optics. It's not about vibes. It's not the type of player at the position that you sell off. That's the type of player you look to acquire when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, as the Packers are. So I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Let's take a break to your phone calls and your reaction to today's NFL trade deadline. And we might just have to talk Badgers basketball tonight as well. 608-321-1670 to your calls next.
What's the trade deadline like around here on yesterday?
Say it again.
What's the trade deadline like around here? Is it a lot of conversation or just standard?
Is that what you guys? I thought it was next week. No? That's what it's like.
It's Mike McCarthy in 2016. I saw that clip floating around today. Just excellent podium work. Just excellent podium work for Mike McCarthy. I thought it was yesterday. Pause. That's what it's like. Outstanding delivery. I miss that guy. I feel for him with what's going on down in Dallas. I just think the Jones have completely lost it. Like, now they're acquiring Jonathan Mingo for a 4th-round pick. Brother, that was an offseason thing. Like, you needed the other wide receiver and the running backs in the offseason. Your team is now what? What are the Cowboys now? Mike McCarthy's Cowboys are they're 4-3, right? 3-4. Like, you're cooked. Now you acquire a wide receiver. Now you should be tanking. You should be playing for next year, which, again, poor Mike McCarthy. If you have thoughts on the Packers trading away Preston Smith, I would love to take your call. We could also talk about what Badgers basketball did against Holy Cross last night. How about John Tanji? And how about Greg Gard rebuilding this team back up? A little portal action. And also, what's that? What did I hear? The D word? Development? Look at what Nolan Winter did last night. You love to see it. 608-321-1670 to your calls as promised. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, this is Hot Take Jake. Let me talk to you.
Go ahead, Jake.
Got a few things on my mind. First, it's been an interesting 24 hours or so in the world of Wisconsin sports radio. Karma is real. It's nice to see the good guys win every now and then. If you know, you know. Next,
Right.
I'll talk about the Preston Smith move here a little bit, and then I want to talk about Gutekunst, preemptive leader to defend him. So Preston Smith, I was kind of in your boat, Grant, where like at first I'm like, 7th rounder, like, okay, they must be trying to do something, and then nothing else happens, and then it's confusing. But then I think about it, and it's like, okay, they obviously think what they have could potentially be better. They've got this Mosby kid who was great in training camp. They want to get him more looks.
Sure.
And we talked about how if Green Bay wants to be a Super Bowl contender, 2 of the biggest things that need to happen is Lucas Van Ness needs to look like he's taking another step, and Rashawn Gary needs to play like a true, number 1 type pass rusher.
Agreed.
Preston Smith is irrelevant to all of that. You also have this Davis kid that they got on their practice squad that I think is going to fill that extra roster spot. He's still a young guy, athletic freak that was doing great, pretty productive guy until they moved him to inside linebacker, and that kind of threw off his career trajectory. I think they want to get a look at him. So, maybe we're just overthinking it, and it's like, you know what? We've got these guys that potentially could be better right now, and, whatever, you're going to cut them in the off season. What do you have to lose? Again, it's not going to be some deciding factor on whether or not you're winning a Super Bowl if Preston Smith is here. So I'm getting more and more warmed up to the idea that, okay, let's, if Lucas Van Ness, if you're going to be the real deal, now's your opportunity to prove it. You're not fighting for snaps anymore. Do your thing. But I wanted to talk specifically about Gutekunst because a lot of Packer fans, they'll make the joke like, oh, looks like another deal that the Packers were in on and ultimately didn't get done. We lead the league in trades that they were in on. And I don't know, I have to defend the guy because of all the years where Green Bay's been a title contending team, the fact that they didn't do it was never a talent issue. It was never because they didn't make that extra deal or get that extra player. They had the talent to do it, and it just didn't work out. That's just sometimes the way it goes.
Sure.
But the other thing with Gutekunst is he's a lot like Ted Thompson, where you have a valuation of a single player, and that's how you value that player, and you don't go off of that valuation based on what the market value is.
Sure.
So if you think this guy is, hey, I would trade a 6th-round pick for him, they want a 5th, sorry, I'm not doing it, because you have to stick to your guns. And that's why he's been successful. That's why Ted was successful. Did it maybe burn him a year here and there? Could be. The Randy Moss one was the big one I think about with Ted Thompson. But at the end of the day, you can't go against your philosophy if that's what's gotten you to the dance in the first place.
So I
thought
so.
about
Yeah,
I thought about talking about the Bucks, but I'm going to save that for another day because I can't right now. I don't need that negativity in my life.
I don't either.
Everybody.
I appreciate it. Hot take, Jake. I thought the Bucks. I don't need to talk about the Bucks either. I thought it was a great effort last night against a really good Cleveland team. I actually wouldn't be bent out of shape about it if they didn't have the lead and the ball with less than a minute to go, and then Dame, who's supposed to be the veteran stabilizer. And I know he scored a lot of points. He was great, but like, dude, you can't commit a backcourt violation there. That turnover killed him. And they might have lost anyway, but I don't know. That one really hurt last night, and so did the loss on Saturday. On Gutekunst, I think you're right. There's some definite Ted Thompson parallels, and I think that's how you have continuity in an organization. I think there's parallels between David Stearns and Matt Arnold. That's a good thing. There's definitely parallels from Ted Thompson to Brian Gutekunst. Let's not also act like he didn't pay the Smith brothers and Adrian Amos a lot of money in 19 to bolster that team. And let's not pretend like he didn't pay Josh Jacobs and why am I brain farting? Xavier McKinney this offseason. Like, he's been much more willing when the time is right to strike in free agency than Ted Thompson. So there's a progression, there's an evolution. But at the trade deadline, yeah. And I think it's fine that they're in on I'd rather they're in on all these conversations and they don't hit than just completely out to lunch, which I think was the case with Ted Thompson sometimes. It's not a bad thing to be in conversations. If the price isn't right, the price isn't right. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Mike in Eau Claire.
Hey, what's going on, Mike?
I'm not too upset about Preston Smith. I'd kind of like let Van Ness cook, man.
Yeah. I think to build on Hot Take Jake's point, I don't know if they think, hey, we'll get Preston Smith out of there and we'll get better. I think the Packers thinking is, well, we'll trade Preston Smith, clear up some money, and we know for sure we're not going to get worse, right? This isn't going to hurt them. It might not help them, but it's not going to hurt them, to your point, Mike.
Preston, but they've been using them to almost cover tight ends instead of rushing the passer. And like, we need a pass rusher. I don't know. I'm middle of the road. I agree with you on it. They are just dumping some money. We all know that.
And that's fine. If they're dumping money on a player, like, they're not going to miss him. He was barely playing. So even if it is just a money dump, fine. Then I don't think you're sacrificing performance on Sundays to save that money. It's not like Preston's been a great fit and a super productive player this season.
And then a little off topic, what I wanted to mainly say was that I don't know if you watched the Chiefs game last night.
I did.
Did you?
Yep.
LaFleur needs to play that game for Jordan Love and say, hey, this is how you win in the NFL. You don't need to hit a home run every time. Just take what's there. I know it's probably beating a dead horse, what I'm saying.
No.
But take what's there, dude. This guy's got 3 rings. He's gonna beat Brady. He's gonna have 7 or 8 rings doing what he's doing. And you have similar stats to him, Love. Let's sit down. Let's watch this tape and watch what he does. Let's do this. LaFleur should sit down with Love and watch the whole game with him and say, hey, look at this, look at that. Oh, see that guy's wide open, wide deep, 30, 40 yards down the field? No, he checked down to Kelsey.
Mm-hmm.
You see that? We got Tucker Kraft. We got Luke Musgrave. We got some, 3 other tight ends. I don't even know their damn names.
And Jaden Reed, who's kind of tight end-ish in that he can find that soft spot in the middle of the field and kind of be a security blanket in the same way the tight end can be. Slot receivers can kind of fill that same void.
We can hit the home run when I know that a lot of guys have built it. Like Mahomes built his career hitting the home run early.
Yep.
He had Tyreek Hill, and it was a different situation. The Packers aren't in that situation. They're in the situation of we need to do this. We need to just take what's there, and then you can hit the home run. We got 5, 6. If you count the tight ends, we got 7 guys you can hit a home run with, man.
Mm-hmm.
Just let the home run come. You're not going to – even Barry Bonds will tell you can't hit a home run every time.
I agree. And and Mike, I like the baseball parallel, and I appreciate the call because if, they say in baseball hits are contagious, right? Well, we all agree, and I can't remember who it was. Q brought it up last night. Q and I we don't agree on anything. Q said Jordan Love's a rhythm passer, right? Well, to get in a rhythm, complete some easier passes. Right? Hit a cross, hit a slant, hit an out. And if you watch Brady film or even watch what Mahomes did last night, and Mahomes on this team, this Patriots team, and last year, well, the last 2 years, really the last 3 years, right? Ever since they started winning Super Bowls, they haven't stopped, right? This iteration of the Chiefs remind me so much of the Patriots because they're just so methodical. They don't rely on the big, sexy home run swing plays. Doesn't mean they don't happen. They can happen. but they'll just cut a defense apart play by play by play to the point where it just feels inevitable. It's like, oh, they're driving. We all know how this is going to end, right? And I think Jordan Love needs to do a little bit more of that, and that's something we've talked about plenty. Just take what's there, and after you complete a couple easier ones, 4 or 5, well, now those big swings, those home run plays, you're in a rhythm, they come a little easier, right? If you're always swinging for the fences, you do a little bit too much. You can start to press, and I think Jordan Love has definitely pressed in the last couple of weeks. 608-321-1670. One more call, and then we'll start to head towards our break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. I agree with your callers, what they're saying here, and actually thought he was going to say go for 2 at the end. I thought the Buccaneers should have gone.
Yeah, okay, here's the other thing. Like, if the Bucs win the coin toss, do you think Baker would have driven him down the way that game was going? Because I kind of think they would have. I kind of think that game was decided by a coin toss. Now, if Todd Bowles goes for 2, the game never goes to a coin toss, so sure. I don't know. Everyone on Twitter during games just loves to second guess the 4th down and the 2 points. We all just love to feel smart. We all love to feel like we know more than the coach. And I don't know. I think that can be overblown.
You got to go for 2.
I think so. On the road, underdog. I probably would have. Yeah. I'm just not saying. I don't know if Todd Bowles deserves to get barbecued for not going for 2. That's my point. But
right.
That's small potatoes.
I got a couple of basketball kids in the car going to a game, and one of them's an old Bart Winkler fan, and he goes, "Is that Hot Take Jake?" Oh, yeah, it's Jake.
Oh, he knows Hot Take Jake.
Trash.
He knows the lore.
Yeah.
Wow.
I go, Jake's all right. Jake's okay. I thought his opinion was pretty good, actually. The Packers don't need to make a trade. They don't need to they have the talent. They just got to clean things up.
They need to clean things up on offense. I worry, look, if we get into the playoffs, what happens if Jair pulls his hammy? Like, that's my worry. That's my worry, is we have to go into a playoff run with some mix of Eric Stokes, Corey Ballantyne, and Keyshawn Nixon playing corner. That's my concern. That was the one thing where it's like, man, if you could get an extra corner, that would be great. But I agree, everyone else on offense and up front along the pass rush, everyone's just got to play better, because I think they have the talent too.
Well, right now, who would you favor in the NFC? Lions, Eagles, Packers. That's the order I would have them. Packers are right there. It's not even Packer time yet. Get past the next couple of weeks, get into December, January. They'll be right there. Well, whether they win on the road, we'll see. But I like their chances more on the road than at home. So I think Gutekunst did the right thing. Keep the draft capital, keep them under the cap, and keep building. Because right now the Packers are set up for the next 4 years. Let's face it. They're going to contend for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Look, the price for Marshawn Lattimore, I appreciate it, Tony. I'm just up against it. The price for Marshawn Lattimore was thick. It's like a 3rd and a 4th. It's the entire middle of your draft. And for the Commanders, it makes a little bit more sense because they have a need. They have a pressing need at corner. The Packers could have used one. I certainly would like to. I want Jair Alexander insurance. That's my concern. I've watched Ladarius Gunter try to cover Julio Jones. And I've watched Kevin King, who didn't have a friggin' clue in 2021, try to cover Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Like, I've been to hell and back with undermanned corners against elite wide receivers in big playoff games, and I can see it on the horizon. I close my eyes, and I can just see Keyshawn Nixon having his ass beat by elite wide receivers in an NFC playoff game, and that scares me because I don't trust Jair to stay healthy. And I'm not picking on the guy, right? And by the way, fellow Packers fans, let me take off my owner cap for a sec and just be a fan with everyone else. I know some of you are owners too, but let's be fans for a sec. Don't apologize for being frustrated that Jair Alexander isn't on the field enough. Reporters and stuffy sports talkers, the sports talkers were like, I lost my fandom long ago. I don't cheer for results. I cheer for a good story. I cheer for no overtime. Ha ha ha. Like those people will talk down on fans because they complain that Jair Alexander's hurt again. We have a right to say, hey, the highest paid corner in football is only playing 50% of the games. And that's a little bit of a concern if this team's ever going to win 3 or 4 playoff games in a row. Don't apologize for that, Packers fans, because it's not good enough. And I'm not saying it's personally Jair's fault. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying, hey, Jair is more concerned with talking trash than staying healthy. It's not in his control. His body just hasn't allowed him to stay on the field. But Packers fans, don't ever let stuffy sports talkers or sports writers be like, oh, you're a bad fan. And never let anyone talk down to you about that because it's not enough. They haven't gotten enough from Jair. And that was my worry as the trade deadline expired today and the Packers came away with nothing. I'm scared of a situation where Jair pulls a hammy in the opening quarter of a wild card playoff game, and they are faced with a potential possible playoff run with no Jair. That scares me. And getting a corner today would have helped with that. But I wouldn't have given up a third and a fourth round pick for Marshawn Lattimore, who's got injury concerns of his own. Everybody has injury concerns. Anybody could get hurt at any time, but it's not like we're making up the injury thing with Jair. He's played in like half of his games over the last couple of years. And that's not good enough. So Packers fans, don't apologize for being critical of that. That's not that's normal for a fan to do. And stuffy sports talkers and sports writers will try to stick that down your throat. Don't let them. 608-321-1670. I'll give you some more of my Packers thoughts, including a comment or two from Matt LaFleur from yesterday's presser, kind of big picture going into the bye week. I thought he gave us a couple good nuggets, so I'll share those with you next.
Well, I mean, I played 18 years in Green Bay. I know how teams feel about draft picks.
Hey, they're still going though. They are still going now.
They are, and they've made some great picks over the years.
Absolutely.
But there were a couple times where, maybe bringing in a Marshawn Lynch or maybe just that one guy to put it over the edge may have been worth it. But
that would have been fun. You
never know. You never know. You never know how it's going to jive in the locker room. That's the other part about some of these veteran guys. You never know how it's going to fit in the locker room.
That's Aaron Rodgers on the McAfee show earlier today. I can see McAfee's tweets again. I can't quote tweet him or reply, although I posted the video. I can post the video, but I can't quote tweet the video. It's Rodgers earlier today talking about the trade deadline. 2 thoughts on that. First, he hints at the Marshawn Lynch trade. That could have been a possible move that maybe the Packers should have made. Rodgers is either very, very funny and clever for referencing that trade with Pat McAfee and A.J. Hawk, because A.J. Hawk was the piece that Buffalo wanted back. So Rodgers is either 10 out of 10 humor, very funny, poking fun at A.J. Hawk in there, or a complete and total dumbass. Like, well, you should have traded for Marshawn Lynch. It's like, you realize that the linebacker that helped you win a Super Bowl, A.J. Hawk, and the guy in the Zoom call with you was the Pete. So I don't know if he realized it or not. I'd like to give him credit for realizing and making a funny joke. I can't know for sure. The second part of this answer, actually, it didn't trigger me, because triggered has become such a political, oh, are you triggered? Are you triggered? Well, I'm annoyed. Lots of things annoy me. Am I not allowed to be annoyed in 2024 without being called a snowflake? Am I triggered? No, but I'm annoyed. I was annoyed at the second half of this answer by Rodgers, and I'll play it one more time just to hammer it home.
Maybe just that one guy to put it over the edge may have been worth it. But
that would have been fun.
This part.
You never know. You never know. You never know how it's going to jive in the locker room. That's the other part about some of these veteran guys. You never know how it's going to fit in the locker room.
So not to take pot shots at Rodgers, who's not here anymore. Brother in Christ, it's your job to make it work in the locker room. You're the quarterback. You're the guy who's paid a ton of money. You're the leader. You make it work. It's not a coin flip. Well, I'm a quarterback of this year team. Oh, who'd you acquire? You traded for Von Miller? Well, we'll see if he fits in the locker room. We'll see. You never know. You never know. It could be a mess. Good dude. Go make it so it works. That's your job. That's your role.
You never know. You never know how it's going to jive in the locker room. That's the other part about some of these veteran guys. You never know how it's going to fit in the locker room.
You never know how it's going to fit in the locker room. Brother, you're the quarterback. You're the leader. Make it work in the locker room. That's that's what the money is for. That's why quarterbacks are paid so much, not just to play high-level football, which for Rodgers has been problematic the last couple of years, but also like to do all the other things. Welcoming in a potential addition and making them fit and integrating them in the culture. That's one of the other things, but I digress. I only played that Aaron Rodgers clip because it's topical today, and it was kind of funny. I think he must have been joking about the Marshawn Lynch thing with A.J. Hawk. If he wasn't, it's just kind of a hilarious coincidence. He's like, yeah, we should have traded for Marshawn Lynch. And A.J. Hawk is like, yeah, or like maybe they were made the right choice because I would have been sent to the Bills. Maybe. I don't know. A couple of Matt LaFleur comments that I wanted to play you from yesterday. Big picture comments, because yesterday we were very much reacting to Packers lines, penalties, drops. Jordan Love's interception. We were hammering all that yesterday. Matt LaFleur spoke yesterday. I actually think he gave us some juicy things. Brian Gutekunst speaking right now. We'll hear some of that, and we'll get up to the minute reporting from Mike Clemens in less than an hour, who's at the press conference as we speak. So he's going to join us at 5:30. But from Matt LaFleur yesterday, Ryan Wood asking Matt LaFleur about the penalties. And I included the question because I think it was a good question from Ryan Wood. Listen to this. It's about a minute and 50 seconds. The end is juicy. And that's what I want to talk about, is the final comment here from Matt LaFleur. So here's Q&A, Ryan Wood, Matt LaFleur about penalties.
Cover in the self-scout if you have a good feeling on it already, but the penalties, what's your sense on why they continue to happen? It's not like you coach it that way, obviously. So what?
No, Ryan, we're not coaching penalties. A lot of it goes into those buckets. Some of them are just lack of focus when you're talking about the pre-snap penalties. We've had far too many of those, and it's unfortunate because we want to be able to use our cadence on offense, and conversely on the D line. I mean, you got to key the ball, especially when you're at home and there's a lot of crowd noise. I mean, really, it doesn't matter, home or away. You got to key the football. they got us yesterday in a critical situation where I don't think they were going to run a play, and we jumped off sides and it allowed them to go for it, and they made a play on 4th down. I mean, that was a good throw and a good catch, good route by Amon-Ra. But it was a critical play in the game. You're talking about a 4-point play. And then you have some penalties that are just, when you play with poor fundamentals, they tend to happen. You know, if we get hands outside our framework, whether it's, you know, or if we take, if you're an offensive lineman, you take a poor set, you get beat inside, sometimes you get a holding penalty, whatever it may be. Just those technical errors. And then you have the ones that are completely unacceptable. And it better be pretty clear to our team is just what I deem as the selfish penalties. You know, John getting an unsportsmanlike, those cannot happen. I take those very personally. The way I told them is those are on me. That's on me, because I put you in a position to get that. So next time that happens, you can take your helmet and come stand right next to me, and we'll watch the game together.
That's the clincher. I like that. So Matt LaFleur gave long answers yesterday. I think because he felt like the bye was coming up, and he's like, all right, this is the last time I'm going to have to speak with these jamokes for a couple of days, so I might as well give them their money's worth, and it's appreciated. Coach LaFleur, he did 20 minutes with the media yesterday, and he talked about all the different types of penalties, right? Some penalties are going to happen. It's the same with interceptions. Like, you can't complain about Jordan Love's interceptions on Twitter, because you'll have half of the cheesehead army come with their fists down your throat and be like, they're not all bad. Some interceptions will happen naturally. I know. Cheese and rice. I know. But he's leading the league in interceptions, and he's missed 2.5 games. Yes, some of them will happen. A lot of them cannot. It's the same with penalties. Some will happen. Every once in a while, an offensive lineman's going to get beat and they're going to hold. It happens. Every once in a while, a defensive back is going to try to maintain contact with a wide receiver, and they're going to grab a little bit too much, or an angle is going to make it look a little bit worse than it is, and it's going to get called. I actually thought the Keyshawn Nixon holding penalty on that 3rd down, I don't know that needed to be a penalty. To quote Bill Schroeder, didn't need to be. I don't know that grab. I don't know if he really held him back. I don't know if he really pulled him that hard. Hey, grab, there was contact. Was that egregious? No, but plays like that will happen. You can chalk up a 4-quarter football game with lots of contact, with lots of jawing, with lots of grabbing. There's going to be flags in there, because God knows NFL referees will make it so. They will find some things to call. The pre-snap penalties are 100% completely unacceptable, and Matt LaFleur hints at that. You're playing at home. Nobody's new here. It's the same offensive front. It's the same skill position group as last year. And it's one thing, a left tackle is going to jump. Okay, when Nick Bosa or Aiden Hutchinson is bearing down on me, I might flinch once in a while. Fine. Can Bo Melton and Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, can the skill position players stop moving? You're not blocking anybody. You don't have a 300-pound defensive player waiting to absolutely try to crush you. You're waiting to go run a route. Can we cut the pre-snap penalties out from the skill position players, please? And thank you. We cut out the procedural penalties. A couple holds are going to happen. The real kicker is the undisciplined, the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and I'll play Matt LaFleur's comment on those one more time here. This is the clincher, the whole presser. I thought this was the most important moment from yesterday.
And then you have the ones that are completely unacceptable, and it better be pretty clear to our team is just what I deem as the selfish penalties. You know, John getting an unsportsmanlike, those cannot happen. I take those very personally. The way I told them is those are on me. That's on me, because I put you in a position to get that. So next time that happens, you can take your helmet and come stand right next to me, and we'll watch the game together.
He's kind of a bar. We need more of that.
You can take your helmet and come stand right next to me, and we'll watch the game together.
Now, consensus among people who've covered sports closely and been in locker rooms, and I asked Bill this earlier today, and his answer was a resounding yes. I think anything that Matt LaFleur says at the podium has already been said at least once, probably repeatedly behind closed doors. The Packers players are not hearing this messaging for the first time. But when you take it to the podium, I think it kicks it up a notch. It's Like, oh, now he's talking about it publicly. Now it's just not a conversation in the locker room. Now it's more of a thing. Okay. I like that from Matt LaFleur. I like that a lot. I don't know. I still remain confused on the Nixon thing at the beginning of the game. It just wasn't covered very well in the broadcast, and that's fine. It's like, okay, do we need to Zapruder film the opening kickoff? Like, I get it. Tom Brady didn't do his job because he didn't break down the penalty. I thought Brady was fine. The Fox broadcast is good. They do a good job, but I'm still a little confused on that one. Matt LaFleur seemed to think, yeah, Nixon did something stupid. Okay, so I'll take the coach's word for it. Nixon did something stupid. Nixon seems to do a lot of stupid things. I don't have a problem hanging this one around his neck. That's fine. That's fine. He did something stupid. Hold him accountable, and if he keeps doing it, we'll be watching the game on the sideline with Coach
You can
LaFleur.
take your helmet and come stand right next to me, and we'll watch the game together.
I like that. No, that's on me. You know what, Keyshawn? That's on me. It's on me for putting you in that position, thinking you wouldn't do something stupid, costing your team 15 yards. I like that from Matt LaFleur. I like that a lot. We'll continue to talk about the trade deadline. I want to look at some other moves made around the league because it was a fun day in the NFL. And last night, Monday Night Football was pretty fun too. The Chiefs and the Bucks. I respect the Bucks a lot, but the Chiefs are the Chiefs. They just seem inevitable. They seem so Patriots-ish right now. Not just the way that they win and the wins that they're stacking, not the quantity of wins, but the qualities of the wins. It's just like, man, it's not glamorous, but you just know what you can almost reverse engineer these games. You know the Chiefs are going to win. We just have to figure out and we have to see how it's going to happen, which is how the Patriots felt for so long. 3 minutes. We'll wrap up hour number 1 of the Wisco Sports Show next.
John getting unsportsmanlike. Those cannot happen. I take those very personally. The way I told them is those are on me. That's on me because I put you in a position to get that. So next time that happens, you can take your helmet and come stand right next to me and we'll watch the game together.
Excellent. I like hearing that from Matt LaFleur. Time for a quick call or two before we got a break for an update from Ebo. 5 o'clock, 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Hello? God, that was so crisp by me, too. That was such excellent hosting. How dare you drop off and put me in that spot and hang me out to dry? 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Hello? God, I rushed to get some callers in before the top of the hour, and this is how you people repay me. All right, fine. We'll get back into the trade deadline after the top of the hour here. We'll get an update from Ebo. They did trade Preston Smith. If you're just kind of joining the show, if you're just replugging into the sports scene, if you're getting off of work, they traded him for a 7th-round pick, which at first I'm like, oh, it's not really what a contender is supposed to do. Hopefully this is a precursor to another move, right? I need to see, I keep using this analogy, I need to see the Taylor Rogers and the Esteri Ruiz to Preston Smith, Josh Hader. And we never got it. Now, it makes sense that the Packers would trade away Preston Smith if they're able to get a draft pick, all the better. I mean, I think the Packers probably would have spent a draft pick to get off of his money, especially because he's not really playing all that much. He played like all 21, 22 snaps against Detroit on Sunday, not performing at a high level. I don't think the Packers are trading away Preston Smith with the idea, well, now we clear the runway for Lucas Van Ness and others, and we'll get better. That's their hope. They're probably hoping that Lucas Van Ness takes a leap at some point this year, and Enigbari and Gary take a leap. That's probably what they're hoping for. But I think we can say with a certainty today, we know they're not going to get worse because Preston Smith wasn't really adding all that much. So, okay, we know they're not going to get worse. At the very worst, they're going to maintain the team that they've been, and we can get off millions of dollars, tens of $millions worth of cap hits the next couple of years and get a 7th-round pick back. All right, I get it. My only problem with this is it's like a spiritual problem. It's like it's a grand 10,000-foot view problem. It's like if you are contending and you're in a Super Bowl window, especially if you're a young team like the Packers are, you don't trade away pass rushing depth. You look to acquire it. You don't trade away a trustworthy veteran presence. You look to acquire it. So while I understand the statistics and the numbers and everything, I see it. I understand why the Packers did this. I just, spiritually, it almost doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? They're contending. They're supposed to be looking to add pass rushing depth, not necessarily trading it away. And I think Brian Gutekunst, and we'll hear from Goody and get some firsthand reporting of Mike Clemens, who's at Brian Gutekunst's presser. He'll join in about in a half an hour. I think they feel solid about some of the internal pieces that will now get opportunities in the absence of Preston Smith. Okay, fine. Maybe they do get better. But at the very least, we can say they're not going to get worse because Preston Smith wasn't doing much for him. And now they save a bunch of money on the cap in years to come. So, okay, I get it. I'm just left a little underwhelmed, which I think is fair. More of your thoughts on the trade deadline. We'll get to your calls. Please wait on hold. I'll get to you. Don't drop off. Hour 2, Wisco Sports Show next.
you make of where this football team is, that maybe you haven't put together your best game yet, but you've still been winning a lot of games. You've still been able to get to
Yeah, I think we've had good moments of playing good complementary football, and then we've had some not so great moments. And I think some of the mistakes maybe that we've made the last 4 games that we've won showed up yesterday against a good football team that it's hard to overcome those in those moments. So Detroit played a clean game. I mean, when you look at it, they played a clean game, didn't make any critical mistakes where we had a handful of critical mistakes that really came back to bite us. I was disappointed with the number of penalties and just self-inflicted wounds that we had, and that's a lot to overcome right there. And obviously, we didn't do a good enough job to be able to overcome that.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Thinking along those lines, kind of that we were hitting at before we broke at 5 o'clock, the idea, well, at the very least, the Packers aren't going to get worse at pass rusher. There's a hope that they might get better. But at the very least, we know they're not going to get worse because Preston Smith wasn't contributing a whole lot. Ryan comments on the live stream on Facebook. Says, sending Preston Smith to the Steelers is great news for Aaron Mosby, Van Ness, and Igbare, and the Packers' young rushers. It'll save $7.6 in 25 and over $18 million in 2026. It's going to save them a lot of money in the years to come, which is excellent considering they're probably going to have to cut him anyway or find a way to move him anyway. So to get a pick out of it as well and open up some opportunities for younger guys. Yeah, that's great. I guess I just would have liked to move, then go get Azeez Ojulari. If your pass rush isn't good enough, and it hasn't been good enough, I don't really love just hoping that the pieces that are there already will get better, but I understand, and I guess there are worse approaches. I'm still scared to death of the corner position. We're going into the playoffs feeling great about a potential Super Bowl run. If things start to kind of pull together and this team gets hot, and then, what's this? Jair did what in practice? He pulled his hamstring. He's going to miss a month. Great. Okay, so now it's Stokes, Nixon, and Valentine. That scares the daylight out of me, and it should scare the daylight out of you. Walking a tightrope a little bit too much at that position for a team that's supposed to be a contender. Just my 2 cents. I don't think it's an outlandish take. I don't think it's an outlandish feeling to have about that position. It's the Wisco Sports Show. Mike Clemens going to be here at 5:35. He will bring us sound from Brian Gutekunst's presser and reaction and all the other things that he saw and that he heard up in Green Bay today. I think Brian Gutekunst is done speaking. I saw a couple quotes on Twitter. Not even going to touch it. I'm going to let Mike bring us the good word and explain to us what he saw and what he heard in about a half hour. 608-321-1670. Back to the phones. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this? Hello? Is something wrong with the phone? Let's try one more time. Wisco Sports Show. Is there anybody there? Hello? Oh, I got somebody. What the hell?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. All right, maybe. Okay, I thought it was maybe a me issue. I just think we have impatient callers today. What's going on?
No, it's kind of an ominous night out here. If you were out here, it's kind of got that darkness to it and the gray sky and, some cool colors, actually, in many ways.
Interesting. Black and gray mostly, I bet.
Black and gray, and there's some greenish in the water that's highlighting. Yeah, I'm describing. I can't do it justice, so I won't.
Okay.
I have an interesting story from when I voted this morning.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I went in right away. Right away this morning, there the polls open, and I was standing there, and there was a lady there with a baby carriage and a baby in it.
Okay.
And I thought it looked kind of suspicious because I thought she could be smuggling ballots in. And sure enough, they searched the baby. So I pointed her out, and they searched the baby. They searched the baby's diaper, and there was a ballot in it.
No, there wasn't. Was there really? There wasn't. Shut up.
Yes, but they accepted it because it was for a crappy candidate.
Yeah,
so
there we go.
That's.
Thank you, Eric. I needed that comic relief.
I just made that up.
That was excellent.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we should pull any alarm bells now for you Green Bay Packer fans.
No.
I think it's fine. Everything's fine. I did like last week in the lead up to this game.
Okay.
Because I was listening to you and everybody else talk about it, and I kind of got the feeling that you weren't really 100% confident on this game. And then the weather report came out, and everybody grabbed onto that.
Sure.
Even I did. I'm like, this is it. This is the reason we're going to win. And it didn't turn out like that. But I don't know. I got this. I've been in those games before where I'm on the losing side of it. You had to feel during that game that Detroit's going to win that game, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, after Jordan Love threw that pick six, the Packers moved the ball for over 400 yards. They outrushed, they outpassed. The defense held the line to 17 points.
Right. Listen, that's not a good stat, Grant, because you'll see that a lot in blowouts, and this was kind of a blowout.
I mean,
the eyeball test on that game, Detroit blew you out. They did.
See, I sound like a whiny fan that wants to defend my team if I agree with you or disagree with you. And I don't want to come across as a whiny fan. I'm trying to figure out how I want to. The Packers moved the ball, and the defense stopped the Lions. They just threw a pick at the worst time.
Kinda.
They dropped a lot of passes. Not kinda. I mean, they forced punts. They like the Lions had scored 50-something, 30-something, and 40-something the last 3 weeks. And the Packers defense held them to 17. Oh, but they took their foot off the gas. Really? You think Dan Campbell and that Lions team took their foot off the gas?
I don't think they took their foot off the gas, but they were playing in a monsoon. That'll generally bring your production down.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you listen, you're playing, and I've watched a lot of football, Grant. You played a team that is playing the best, I think, football in a series of games. Maybe the 2011-12 Green Bay Packers, I think, were playing better than they have in this stretch.
Sure.
How many games has Detroit won in a row now? I mean, considering, take it back to last year.
Well, they lost to the Bucs. I mean, that was their only loss. That lost to the Bucs, right? And that was even close. The Lions could win that game.
But I mean, this is back to, like, I think Green Bay was the year they won the Super Bowl the year after. I think they won like 15 games in a row.
The Packers? Yes.
It was just
Oh, not 15.
So, I mean,
it might have been like 14. They lost to the Chiefs, but that wasn't in the last week of the season.
Right. I'm just saying that this Detroit team, there's no shame in losing to this team.
I'm not,
because they're playing at a top-notch level. But I would be concerned about the interception.
Okay, so that's the thing. And Eric, this is an excellent call. Happy election day. I'm going to let you go.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Eric on I-90. Good election joke. There's no shame in losing to the Lions. All right? I'm going to reference two games. And I did this yesterday. So if you heard this once already, the Packers lost to the Lions. What was the final score yesterday? I'll pull it up here. I don't have it in front of me. Let me pull up both of these games that I want to talk about. Vikings. Okay, so the Packers lost to the Lions on Sunday by a score of 24-14. And by my estimation, the defense performed better than I thought they would. That was in a monsoon. Okay. But the defense performed a lot better than they would. The offense moved the ball. They were 400 yards of offense. They ran the ball. Guys were open. They lost 24-14 to the Lions. Yeah, there's no shame in losing to the Lions. I have some shame in the way that the Packers played on Sunday. Vikings fans, I don't think there's shame in losing to the Lions 31-29 the way that you did. And the day that that happened, that was the day that the Packers beat the Jags, right? Or the Texans. I don't remember. I know it would have been a noon game. So I guess both of those were noon games. But I remember going to the store. I went to the Piggly Wiggly after the game. And then I got a text from a friend who was at a bar. And they're like, hey, come have one. I'm like, well, it's literally on my way home from the grocery store, so I'll stop. And I stopped in the bar. This is Sunday afternoon. And this was after, it would have been the day of the Texans game. Because the Packers had played the Texans and the Lions had played the Vikings. That was the noon slate. So what was that, 2 weeks ago now? And at the bar, there was a Vikings fan in a Vikings jersey. It was an Aaron Jones jersey, and it was one of the throwbacks with the more whitish. Like, I think they're really sharp jerseys. And I actually told the guy, I didn't have any Packers stuff on. I think I had my Badgers shirt on actually at the time. I don't know why I remember, but I do. And I told the guy, that's a sweet jersey. Sweet jersey. I'm a Packers fan. That's a sweet jersey. And the guy goes, oh, they played bad today. Not today, man. I'm like, well, they lost by 2 to the Lions at the buzzer. Like, it was a pretty good game. Coin flip game. He easily could have won. And he goes, yeah, I suppose you're right. I'm like, yeah, exactly. That, no shame in losing to the Lions like that. The Vikings, I thought, put together a very good game, played them down to the wire. If the Packers would have caught all those passes and eliminated penalties, and they lose at home to the Lions in a monsoon, 28-27, great game. Like, yeah, you'd rather win, but no shame in losing to a team that great playing that well. I can't, and I see some comments on the live stream like, no reason to be overly concerned about this game. No reason to it's the Lions. It's not a big deal. Yeah, but it's the same issues. It's the same mistakes that we've been seeing all year. It's the dropped passes. It's the penalties, and it's not getting any better. It's not that they lost to the Lions. The Lions are a great team. It's how they lost to the Lions. They lost to the Lions being the same dumb team they've been since week 1. And the hope in the first month of the season, especially then when Jordan Love came back from injury the second time, the hope was they grow up over the course of the season. They cut out the penalties. They cut out the drops. They have not. Now it's week 10, and it's a concern because this is who they are. It's not an ugly, bumpy start to the season. This is who they are. 608-321-1670. Another call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, how we doing?
Vagabond John, I am excellent. Please tell me you're here to sing the praises of Greg Gard. Please, 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 please.
Oh, I mean, how can you not? An 80-40 run covering the
How
spread?
mad at running a risk of sounding like Ebo right now. How mad was the Fire Guard crowd last night? They thought in the first half, Vagabond John, they thought they were about to have their moment. They thought so close. Almost had their moment. They are furious. The Fire Guard crowd is furious today that they don't get to bitch and complain that the Badgers lost to Holy Cross. Like they thought they were going to. They jumped all over. Oh, Greg Gard sucks. Look at, they're down to Holy Cross. No. Greg Gard did his job again. Looks like he rebuilt this team nicely this offseason. And don't look now, but Nolan Winter is developing.
Yeah, that's kind of the exciting thing. I think, I've been critical of the Greg Gard development. I think he's an elite in-game coach. I think he's a solid recruiter. I think he can put together a good team. But we've seen a lot of bigs come and go where it looks like they peak at their sophomore year. And obviously this is Nolan Winter's sophomore year. So if this is his peak and he added a bunch of elements over the last 12 months, hell yeah, I'm ready for it. It's gonna be a fun 4.5 months. I've been fighting that battle on Twitter. There's a lot of people who got on me, for pointing out, I've had the cupboard conversation in Badger football, and I'm known as the old school guy in Badger Twitter, the online crew.
Yeah.
And so now it's very fun to see those same exact accounts really pissed off today that the Badgers basketball team looked good.
There is a large sect, by the way, of Badgers Twitter who are like fickle people. And they didn't exist. They weren't in the trenches during Paul Christ or Gary Anderson or even farther back to Bielema. And those people scare me. They worry me. That thing scares me.
It's very weird. It's very weird. The fickle people are a weird bunch. I think they assumed that we were going to turn into Ohio State like quickly. And then when it doesn't, the worse Luke Fickell in the field looks, and by the way, being at Iowa in a monsoon and then following it up the next day being at Lambeau in a monsoon. Now I'm down here in Chicago in a monsoon. I don't know what's happening this November, but there's a lot going on. But the worse Luke Fickell does, the more they hate Barry Alvarez and Paul Christ. That's
bizarre.
Kind of the weird dynamic that's going on in Badger fandom right now. The worse Luke Fickell's team looks, the more they hate Barry Alvarez and Paul Christ. And so my question for that crew is, are you ready to tear down the statue? Are you going to rename Camp Randall? Because I don't think you can hate Paul Christ that vehemently and not have some sort of angst about Barry Alvarez. Because that's a guy that won 62% of his games, never won a national championship, but we built him a damn statue.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We don't need to go all the way there. But quick note on the Packers.
Yes.
I don't disagree. I fought it last year, and I appreciate that you're carrying the banner and having the same argument. If I were, one of my detractors last year, I would say 5 yards to carry is terrible, no matter what the final score is. So being at that game, I do agree with Eric. Like, it was just so messy. It was so messy. And if you count dropped passes, do we have a final count?
I think PFF had 6 or 7.
So drop passes and drop snaps. What was the total there? Did we get to 10?
It had to be close. If it wasn't 10 combined, it was very close. It was 9.
And the crowd at Lambeau Field was just electric to start the game. And the angst that builds throughout just seeing this team just make those mistakes. And so there's been some podcasters, Pete, I've gone back and forth with them a couple of times, Bukowski out there. The Packers weren't dominated. And I think there is a thing in football of clean football can dominate. And I think the Packers were dominated a little bit because of the mistakes. Like it wasn't anything the Lions were doing or not doing. They're dominated in the football game. It never really felt we ever had a chance to win because of just how juvenile mistakes were being made. And to your point, it kind of is who they is. And I think that's what the coaching staff has to figure out if we're going to go where we want to go. So mistakes were brutal, and overall it's fun to be there though.
It's the juvenile mistakes, the penalties, and the mistake. Those mistakes robbed us of a good game, right? If they don't drop all of those passes and they don't commit those penalties, the Packers still might very well lose. But that's a game that probably comes down to the wire in the elements under the lights, and I would have liked to see that. Same with the Vikings. Yeah. Now, God bless Jeff Hafley's defense, because that defense kept him in the game and gave him opportunities longer than they did against the Vikings. They couldn't get off the field in the Vikings game, right? But I just feel like in these divisional games, both of them have been at Lambeau, early mistakes and messiness and bad interceptions from Jordan Love have kind of robbed us of an opportunity to watch two teams be strategic and to mix and match play calls and to dial something up on defense. Like, we haven't gotten that in the late game after halftime. You know what I mean? Or the Vikings game, I know, was a little weird, but the script of the game was just turned so much on its head. We weren't treated to a normal, proper football game, a game that should have been very good.
Yeah, and the way the Lions executed in the crucial moments just shows where that team is maturity-wise. You think about they scored 2 touchdowns on 4th down. And you said it last week, like, you nailed it. You're scared of Dan Campbell because he's freaking Dan Campbell, and you don't have to stop him for 3 downs. You have to stop him for 4. And they ended up with 2 4th-down touchdowns in a monsoon game. And Packer fans in the stands were a little bit getting in it with the Detroit fans. The Detroit, I kind of love it. They just have the Jared Goff chant. That's like their team chant right now. So they just start, Jared Goff, Jared Goff.
It's pretty good.
Packer fans are like, he threw it 7 yards. It wasn't even that impressive. Like, he threw it 7 yards in a monsoon on a dime on 4th down and scored a touchdown. Like, Jared Goff is playing some pretty freaking awesome football. Great rivalry building between those. Detroit, I got to hand it to them. I don't hate them yet. They're just kind of fun. And as Eric said, they're playing some pretty damn good football. So excited for the rest of the year to see what they can do. But, Packers fans, we clean it up a little bit. I think we'll be just fine.
I would agree with a lot of that, Vagabond John. That's a fun call. Thank you for humoring me and talking Badgers hoops and Luke Fickell a little bit. On the rivalry part of this matchup. So I was saying all last week, like, this game is gonna mark a step up in this rivalry. And I think I was right, by the way. Like, Amon-Ra St. Brown wore a Green Bay sucks sweatshirt in. And Packers fans, got to call you out a little bit, and I am one of you. Like, I think we kind of acted like babies a little bit on Sunday. He's like, oh, you're going to wear a sweatshirt that says Green Bay sucks? That's classless. It's like, no, that's good rivalry stuff. Green Bay sucks, really? That's what we're going to lose our mind over? Or Amon-Ra St. Brown, when he's high-fiving the crowd, he's skipping the hands of Packers fans? Of course he is. It's a rivalry. God, Packers fan. It's like, well, we want it to be a rivalry, but we always want our team to win, and we never want the opposing fan base to get one over on us. Come on. And also, that guy at the Lions game who had the cheese grater on his head, who was tweeting a picture like, I'm the guy I'm making the rounds on the internet. It's like, I've seen 100 opposing fans wear a cheese grater head. Like, do anything original before. I know everyone wants to have their moment online, but I'm the one wearing the cheese grater. There were probably a dozen people in cheese graters at the game on Sunday. And there typically are when there are opposing fans. It's a very common piece of headwear. 608-321-1670. Any last minute thought on the Packers? I'll get to you on our last segment before we get to Mike Clemens coming up next.
you make of where this football team is, that maybe you haven't put together your best game yet, but you've still been winning a lot of games. You've still been able to get to
Yeah, I think we've had good moments of playing good complementary football, and then we've had some not so great moments. And I think some of the mistakes maybe that we've made the last 4 games that we've won showed up yesterday against a good football team that it's hard to overcome those in those moments. So Detroit played a clean game. I mean, when you look at it, they played a clean game, didn't make any critical mistakes where we had a handful of critical mistakes that really came back to bite us.
I'll say so. A solid handful, a full handful, large hand, maybe 2 handfuls. Cup both hands together. A lot of backbreaking mistakes. Good teams don't make a lot of backbreaking mistakes, especially with the frequency that this Packers team has, which is why I'm kind of backing off on the idea that this is a great team. They don't get to be called a great team. Great teams don't make this many mistakes. They're not this dumb. They're a talented team that has yet to put it all together. They're 6-3 because they're really talented. But they got a lot of things to clean up. Luckily, they have a bye week and then another half of the season to go. It's a long season, even though it feels like it's going by quickly. Because I guess it is. 608-321-1670. Got time for a call and a couple more thoughts, and then we're going to break a little early to get to Mike Clemens, who's standing by up in Green Bay post Brian Gutekunst presser. Wisco Sports Show, who's this?
This is John in Cornell.
Hey, John, what's going on?
Hey, not a whole lot. Hey, my quick comment, I do think the Packers shot themselves in the foot with the mistakes. I think if they had played a clean game, hey, might have been a lot less, might have been a lot closer.
It would have been closer at least. They would have had a shot to actually play a normal football game in the second half, which is, I just would have liked to see that. I would have liked to see the Lions under a little stress in the elements, I guess. That's all.
Agreed. 2 more points, and then I know you got the guy coming on, but second point is, you really have to hope for the Packers' sake. You hope they learn from it, and they show up. When do they play them again? In 4 weeks? 3 weeks?
I don't know exactly. I don't have that. I'll pull it up. Keep talking. I'll find it for you.
Okay. So really, what we have to hope for as a Packers fans is that they learn from this, and when they meet them next time, they come out and they just take it to them. That's what we really, if the Packers are going to excel and learn and make a deep run in the playoffs, you got to stand toe to toe with the Lions, because they're not as the way things look currently, you might be facing them in the NFC Championship. So
could be.
You got to be ready to rock.
Yeah, it's in 4 games. It's the Thursday after Thanksgiving. And John, just because I got to go, because I want to make sure we have lots of time with Mike Clemens, who's up in Green Bay. He's going to bring us a lot of juicy information from what he heard and saw earlier today, including audio from Brian Gutekunst, who just spoke. They play them in a month. And to your point, they come out pissed off. They take it to them. I want to see that against the Bears. I want to see a grown-up, buttoned-up, pissed-off version of this team coming out of the bye. I don't want to wait until the second Detroit game to see it. I want to see it a week from Sunday in Chicago. I want to see this team come out of the bye and said, you know what? We farted around a lot in the first half, and we let 2 division games slip away because we played the messiest brand of football possible. I want to see them come out and absolutely take it to the Bears. That's where we start. That's where this team starts, and that's a week from Sunday. All right, let's take a break. I mean it. I want to get to Mike Clemens with plenty of time. Wisco Sports Show, we're back in a couple of minutes.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
First off, just want to say thanks to Preston Smith. 2019, that was we signed 4 guys, and you never really know how that was going to shake out. And for him to be, here still 5.5 years later and produce like he's produced, and done a lot of good things for us. I'm really appreciative. Played a lot of good football for us, won a lot of games, and I wish him nothing but the best moving forward.
I know general managers always say that about players when they depart. Well, most of the time. I'd say 99% of the time they say that about players when they depart. But I said this back at 4 o'clock, too. I can't imagine how the Preston Smith signing would have gone any better, other than maybe making and winning a Super Bowl, obviously. But, if you would have traveled back in time to 2019 and said that morning, hey, this Preston Smith signing, he's going to be here through 2024. He's going to be nothing but available and reliable and productive and an awesome member of the Packers locker room. What a great Packer. And I said that back at 4 o'clock, and I probably should have reiterated it throughout the show, but my bad. Mike Clemens is now joining us. He's up in Green Bay, brought to us on the network by the Bay Motel. Mike, I'm not overstating it, right? I think Preston Smith he was one of the best Packers for the last 4 or 5 years. What an awesome signing that turned out to be.
Yeah, exactly. And here's what it's like to cover the Green Bay Packers. You're watching these games. They're winning some close games, against the Texans and the Jaguars, and, the ups and downs at quarterback, et cetera. And then, your listeners, Bill Michaels' show's listeners, Ebo's listeners saying, hey, where's Rashawn Gary? Where's the pass rush in this? And, us asking some of the assistant coaches on the defensive side of the ball, one of them just saying, we're still in transition. I mean, I know we're halfway through the season already, but there's still some things that we're sort of picking up in order to all be in sync, little things in terms of the way you handle yourself. So then the next thing is somebody in the press box, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, was talking about, hey, have you noticed that Preston Smith snaps are down? And it's like, yeah. That sort of collective thing. You're right. But then other things happen and you're trying to follow other stories. And then I keep on, hitting up the locker room 3-4 days a week, every minute that's open. And like, where's Preston, man? Usually he wants to come out here and talk about how big a game this is, little leadership. Hasn't done any media. And I keep noticing, because they've got these video screens in the locker rooms and in the lounges on what the schedule is. And if it says, reporters are in until 2:50, and he comes walking in every day at 2:48 with 2 minutes left, before their next meeting, when they shut down the locker room and access to reporters, it's like, why doesn't this guy want to talk? And then just the other day, Ellie French, this reporter from the Fox TV station.
Friend of show. Very good football mind, yes.
In Green Bay. She was stopping by, saying, hey, Preston, by the way, she goes, I started out in Virginia and I interned. And for one summer, I was, covering the Washington team, the then Redskins. And were you still on them? He goes, well, so they were going back and forth, what years that, they may have crossed over, et cetera. And then I stood there and I said, yeah, well, I've been here since Lynn Dickey and she was Lofton, and then Preston said, we know you're old. We know that you're old. So, you have a little casual, that was just like Friday, right? But you're thinking, well, maybe we'll catch him after the game. And then again, he disappears after the game the other night against the Lions. And here we are on trade deadline day, and he gets traded. So it's like, how it's like in the air a little bit. So a year ago at this time, Grant, the Packers were 3-6, and they traded Rasul Douglas to the Bills because they had some younger corners that they just wanted to get a look at. And they thought, and there was other things where they felt like they needed to move on. So why Gutekunst was just asked about a half hour ago, why would you trade Preston Smith when you're 6-3?
It's no different than last year. I think there were some players we wanted to see. I think that the trend of how the snaps were going was only going to continue that way. So, I think it wasn't something that we set out to do. It wasn't something that we called a bunch of teams saying, "Hey, are you interested in Preston Smith?" Because we know his value. But when the opportunity came and we got the phone call, we just thought it made sense for us for what we're trying to do. And again, I think he's going to a very good situation with a playoff caliber team and a really good organization. So that always, from my end of it, does help a little bit, especially with a guy who's given to us what Preston has given to us.
Scheme probably fits Preston Smith a little bit better in Pittsburgh. 3-4, 4-3, all that stuff. I think here's the way I view this, Mike. I can say pretty confidently that they're not going to get worse without Preston Smith. Now, I don't know for sure that they're going to get better. They could, right? Let's get Mosby. Let's get Van Ness more ups. They could get better, but at the very least, they're not going to get worse. And if you can maintain, at the very least, save yourself some money, get a draft pick, and get a look at the younger guys, I totally understand why they made this trade.
And Preston turns 32 later this month.
Yeah.
This summer, and again, if you have the opportunity like I have, and you're at practice every day, and you're watching drills, and then you go in, you talk to coaches, and then you kind of talk to other players across the locker room, it's not hard if you're paying attention during OTAs and mini camps to say, "Ooh, who's this guy? Who's this guy?"
Mm-hmm.
So, and I love, like there was one time there was this guy who had been cut by the Texans, but I saw that they kept on using him in punt returns, and I couldn't believe his speed, how fast he was, and how some of the assistant coaches really believed him. They want to get him out on special teams. Well, he ended up being a starting corner, and that was a guy named Tremont Williams.
Yeah.
Out of Louisiana Tech, I think. There's guys like that every year you find. So there's two guys this summer that when, Bill Michaels puts you on the air and says, "Oh, who do you think is a guy to watch during training camp?" One was a tight end who actually had a pretty good first exhibition game this year and then kind of dropped off. And the other one is a linebacker who, remember all those reports when Sean Clifford was having passes deflected and intercepted?
Yep.
While Jordan Lovett, this Aaron Mosby, who is this kid? I mean, hard hitting and instinctive and making picks from an inside linebacker position, wherever they put him. And I thought, I came on there, watch this Aaron Mosby guy. And here we are now in midway through the season, and this guy's going to get more snaps along with Brenton Cox, who's been there. But Gutekunst was asked, what about Lucas Van Ness, your first round pick, or J.J. Enigbari, or Rashawn Gary? I mean, when are they going to pick it up on the pass rush?
Yeah, I think for that entire group, we need more from those guys as we move forward into the second half of the season, and I think we'll get that. I think as the last few games have trended, Lucas's snaps have kind of already gone up to where he's kind of going to be probably in JJ and then those guys. So, I like that group. I like the way they work. They got to continue to keep pushing, and I think the addition of some of these guys getting some more snaps will help that.
So I think Rashawn Gary should get better. I think he's good enough where I can expect he's going to produce more. Lucas Van Ness is still very young. I think he should get better. Kingsley Enigbari, Mike, has kind of been steady Eddie. I've been pleased with his performance all year. I don't have as lofty expectations for Enigbari as I do for Gary, or maybe for the upside of Van Ness. But I think Enigbari, for the role that he plays in this pass rushing group, I think he's had a great year and has been just about as good as you could maybe expect.
Exactly. And if Preston Smith, who was on the field for 36% of the snaps in the rain against the Lions the other night, someone's got to pick up that time. And it's going to be, like you say, guys like Enigbari or this Mosby guy that I'm talking about. So the Packers trade Preston Smith to the Pittsburgh Steelers today for a 7th-round pick. But also, that means that the Steelers have got to pick up his paycheck. That's going to be at least $3 million, I think, this year off the salary cap. $9 million, it would have been $9 million next year. This is a silly number. $18 million if he was here 3 years from now. Silly.
Yeah, non-guaranteed numbers.
Right. So why would the Steelers want a guy coming in, 32-year-old Preston Smith, in the middle of the season when they got T.J. Watt there? And the answer is Nick Herbig, the former Badger from a couple of years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been out for 3 games with a hamstring injury. So that's part of it. So between T.J. Watt and Highsmith, now you bring in a veteran like Preston Smith who can take care of that. Interesting, by the way, when the Packers brought in the Smith brothers, Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith, and they had a couple of good seasons together. Then Zadarius mysteriously left, went to the Vikings, was there for a cup of coffee. Then he went to the Browns. And today Zadarius traded to the Lions, like everybody sort of predicted over the weekend. So, they're trying to fill in that gap with Hutchinson out for the rest of the year with the broken leg.
Yeah.
The Washington Commanders making trades because they think that they've got a hot team that, act now while the Eagles and the Cowboys are still kind of struggling. So the Packers were asked, Gutekunst asked, do you think that you've done enough to win a Super Bowl this year?
I do. I think a lot of the moves you saw today were your reactions to injuries and things like that, where you're missing things. But yeah, no, I really like our group. I think we obviously we do a lot of work prior to the season to try to make sure that we're a deep team that can, sustain an entire season. And if we have injuries that we don't have to go outside of the building to fulfill that. And I think we've done that. And I feel really good about our football team. I like our depth. That can change in a hurry. You know what I mean? And that's whenever you move off a player like Preston Smith, you're a couple injuries away from man. That may not have been the best thing, but at the same time, I really do like our depth. We got to continue to come together as a football team and play better football at times. But we're 6-3. I think we're in a good spot. I'm excited about the second half of the season and see how these guys grow together.
Mike Clemens is joining us thanks to the Bay Motel up in Green Bay. I guess it's not a surprise, Mike. We sit here and we bellyache about corner. They don't have enough pass rushers. Well, Goody had a chance to draft a corner or to add a corner. He had a chance to draft more pass rushers. He didn't in the offseason. So we already kind of knew how he felt about these position groups and certain players. My nightmare, Mike, and I know this is off the beaten path of what we're talking about at edge rusher and defensive lineman, but my nightmare is this Packers team gets hot in the second half. It's like, oh man, it really feels like they could make a run. And we're closing in on week 17, week 18. And then, we get a report on a Friday that Jair pulls his hamstring in practice and then he misses a month. And then this cornerback room looks a lot different. And just based on the last couple of years of evidence, his track record now, he gets hurt a lot. I don't love needing to trust him. And I guess that was the one thing that left me wanting today. I would have liked a little bit more security at corner.
Yeah, it helps too. That Evan Williams injury, the hamstring, and how well he's played at safety next to, your like captain Xavier McKinney. And so Javon Bullard moving from the slot back and all that. But that kind of hurt your depth there as well. He said that he likes what Keyshawn Nixon is doing. And certainly they're all, were really impressed with the rookie Javon Bullard was doing in the slot.
I think Nixon's been good at outside corner. The problem is if Jair's not out there, he's not a second corner opposite your elite guy who can get help. He's all of a sudden your number one guy. It all hinges on Jair's health. That's how you have to look at that secondary. And that's what worries me. I think Nixon is in small samples or alongside Jair at outside corner. He's actually been a lot better than I would have guessed starting this season. Yeah, and totally.
Eric Stokes is healthy and still fast, but he just makes coverage mistakes that are head scratchers. I mean, he screws up zone defense. They're in cover 3. Okay, you cover the third of the field, and he's up there on the flats, and some guy's running past him wide open behind him. And so well, that's what they pay the coaches to take care of. The other issue is about Jordan Love. How do you think Jordan Love's had 10 interceptions. The one he threw against the Lions actually may have cost them the game to go 17-3 in those conditions and the way that game was playing. So Gutekunst was asked, we know that Jordan Love was spectacular at the end of last season. How do you think he's performing in his second year as your starter?
Yeah, good. Obviously, he's had a little bit of some interruptions with the missing some time and working through injuries and stuff. But, he's really unflappable. He's kind of the same guy every day. His focus is really, really good. So, I think, our offense has been very, very explosive at times because of him, and others as well, but very much because of him. Again, I think we as a football team are still, we're very much working into a complete team and a team that can win situational football, and we're not there yet. But now I think he's played very well.
Obviously don't want to see 10 interceptions in 6.5 games. Are you happy with the decisions he's making though? The execution just needs to be better.
Yeah, I think that's a Matt question. I mean, there's some that I'm sure he would like back, and I'm sure our team would like back as well. But again, I think when you're able to make plays like he does, I think there's a bit of a fine line where you're feeling that he's still a very young player from the amount of times he's started. And I've always thought it's about 20 to 26 games before guys really settle into what they're doing. And I think he's a little bit in that time right now as well.
So I like that candor. That's some good honesty. Matt LaFleur was pretty honest. He spoke at length yesterday, Mike. He went like 25 minutes with you guys and spoke a lot about Jordan Love's decision-making. And I think it's just a time and place thing with Jordan Love. They want him taking shots. They want him pushing the ball down the field. But Brady reiterated this on the broadcast on Sunday too. A lot of times you don't need to push the ball down the field. A lot of times you don't need to put the ball up for grabs, especially with an offense as talented and as well run as this one. I just think he needs to settle in and pick his moments a little bit better.
If it's 2nd and 1, don't be taking shots down the field.
No need at all.
I mean, think more of the situation before the ball is snapped and before you say, act like you've got to make a desperation play or think that you're going to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Be more safe with the football. I'll leave you with this. So it's Sunday night, and it's 2 hours before the game. It's a steady rain, and there's just a few kickers out there. Some other guys warming up. And I carefully looking, who's this guy with the black, winter coat on and the glasses on and stuff? Down there in the Jaguars warming up, looking at the special teams guys warming up. And I get a little closer. It's Brian Gutekunst out there by himself looking at the Jaguars. And because they're right there. It's you don't have to spy on their practice or anything like that. And you know what? Today when he was asked about things like, how come Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs, man, these are really great. These guys fit your locker room.
Mm-hmm.
They've immediately taken to the house, and that means everything to Gutekunst. How hard is this guy going to work? Is he going to fit what we're trying to do literally in the culture of that locker room? Are they going to be good fits? Are they going to work hard for their coaches? Am I going to get my money's worth? Are these guys going to prepare, during the week and perform during the games? And that's really important to him, and he is always looking. And whether it's like pregame warm-ups against the Jags, even when he talked about McKinney, says, we played the Giants last year, and I was down on the field during the pregame warm-ups, and this guy does it right. He's watching pregame warm-ups, and he files that in his mind when free agency comes up, like, that's Xavier McKinney. I even saw him during a warm-up. Or one time when we saw him in Senior Bowl, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
All those kinds of things. He's always watching. He's always, taking a peek in the locker room, asking around, talking to the coaches, that kind of thing. That's how you end up being brought in as a free agent or drafted by Brian Gutekunst.
So, Mike, you tell me now as we go into this bye week, and this isn't related to Goody's presser. Maybe it's related to LaFleur's presser a little bit. He kind of hinted at this. I think it could end up being a silver lining that the bye week happened at this moment in time for the team to get healthy. Jordan Love needs a little time, Evan Williams, Jair Alexander, but also I don't hate that they have to stew on this loss now for 2 weeks. I don't hate that they got to think about, man, if we just catch the ball, man, we committed some dumb penalties. Jordan Love for 2 weeks is going to have to think like, man, I can't be throwing picks like that. I almost like that they're carrying this loss into the bye and they get a crack at the Bears on the other side, a divisional opponent. And Xavier McKinney after Sunday was like, man, we got to be better against the teams in our division. We can't keep playing like this. This bye might have come at the perfect time, and I kind of like that they have to stew on this for the next 2 weeks.
No, and this or just a week or two later is where you want to take the bye because, after 10, 11 weeks, the body is so beat up, and that's when you need every extra day that you can. The schedule gets weird between November and December, between Thursday night games and layovers to the next one, then a Monday, and then a Thanksgiving game, and blah blah. So there's also time to recover there when you have a short week, and then you follow that up. But for me, for LaFleur to say, I trust my coaches. It's 2024. I don't have to have these guys sitting around the office for 2 or 3 more days after we've excused all the players and hold meetings. They're out the door now. Go away now. Take the mental break now with your family. I know that you're going to study the tape and then maybe go to your kids' volleyball game or whatever that you want to do. But take the mental break now. And I trust that, when we get back together next Saturday or Sunday, you're going to be ready for Bear Week.
What did you make of, lastly, Matt LaFleur yesterday in his presser basically saying, hey, I take those dumb penalties, those personal fouls or those unsportsmanlike conducts, I take them personally. That's on me. And if guys are going to be committing them, they can bring their helmet and they can come stand next to me and we can watch the game together. What'd you make of that?
Well, he's sending a message to the locker room. He knows it's being heard. There's some things he doesn't have to say in a team meeting. There's some things that he says out there that he knows that the press will pick up or social media pick up.
Sure.
And these guys will hear that. But I mean, he's finding every way to say, we have to emphasize this. This stuff is killing us.
Yeah.
And if you start doing this in November, December football, you'll be home, early to 2025.
Well, and I think it's shades of last year when they started so slow. And Matt LaFleur, it's like, man, we can't even get into what we had game plan. We can't even get into our stuff. And I think at some point last season, Matt LaFleur said, okay, if I want my team to avoid starting slow, I'm going to have to emphasize it. I can't just assume that it's going to fix itself. And maybe the drops in the penalties, it has to become an emphasis.
Do you remember the screwed up quarterback sneak against the Falcons down in Atlanta by Jordan Love?
Yep.
And people saying, well, what the hell is that? And then they're kind of blaming it on Josh Myers. Well, then you kind of ask around, and the Packers always like to protect the quarterback, news-wise, blame-wise. The quarterback made mistakes. The quarterback was reading off his wristband, and if he's off by 2 words in that 24-unit play call, then guys follow it, and you get the wrong blocking assignment, and you have mistakes like that. And the offensive lineman ended up looking stupid and taking the blame when, in fact, the quarterback said the wrong play. He got it screwed up a little bit. So some of those last year were on Jordan Love. It seems to improve and get better every week, though.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how they react to this bye. And I'm really excited to see how they come out the other side. Mike, appreciate the time. Thank you for bringing us the latest from Goody's Presser. Thank you always.
Thank you, Grant.
Mike Clemens, brought to us by the Bay Motel up in Green Bay. Quiet, cozy, comfortable, and just a mile from Lambeau Field. It's right off South Military Avenue, baymotelgreenbay.com. Full reservations. 3 minutes. We'll wrap up the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Last couple minutes of the Wisco Sports Show. Appreciate Mike Clemens and all that he does to help out our shows across our network. I got to be in the studio all day. I can't go to press conferences, can't go watch practice. That's what Mike is so good at. Goody speaking pretty candidly, and I guess I got to remind myself, like, oh, why didn't Goody want to address corner? That's a need. Why didn't he want to address defensive line or edge rusher? That's a need. Well, he had opportunities to address those positions in the offseason, in the draft, or in free agency, and he didn't. Because at the time, he said, actually, I like our corner group. I like our edge rusher group. So why now, months later, would that all of a sudden change? And I thought maybe a corner is like, man, I can't trust Jair to stay healthy. Like, yeah, this guy's great, but he only plays 50% of the games, and that's not good enough. It's not good enough. So that is my concern. My concern is the Packers come out of the bye. I'm just creating nightmare fan fiction now. My concern is the Packers come out of the bye and they clean up all the stuff. And Jordan Love gets white hot, and the skill position player group gets white hot. Jeff Hafley's defense puts it all together. The pass rush comes together. This looks like a true Super Bowl team. And we're like, holy balls. This is a year they could go on a run. And then in the final week of the season, we get a tweet during Friday practice. Oh, Jair did what to his hamstring? Had to leave. And he misses the whole playoff run. And we're left trying to patchwork together Eric Stokes, Corey Ballantyne, Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon. It's like, okay, great. That's my concern. And there's not another Jair Alexander out there to be acquired unless you want to trade for Marshawn Lattimore, but I didn't think that made sense for the Packers. I want another somewhat reliable option behind Jair. That scares me. Tomorrow, we'll talk Badgers with Jesse Temple. We'll talk a little Badgers hoops, too. Not necessarily with Jesse, but just with you guys, because Wisconsin Holy Cross was fun last night. I want to talk about Nolan Winter, John Tanji. Talk with Jesse Temple, Wisconsin, Iowa tomorrow night as well. Enjoy the night and anything that might be going on